Jahangir as well is joining us on the phone line this morning. Jahangir, we're trying to puzzle it out ourselves. Hopefully you can shed some perspective on, what's going on here at the moment, and particularly in the India context, where, of course, on one hand got huge relief on the import bill, but on the other hand, concerns about how all of this is going to impact growth.
Look, much of the market reacted to the two statements, one on Friday coming from the Fed and then today coming from BOE. And the hope is that there will be, if not coordinated G3 policy easing, at least, from the side of the Fed and Bank of England. So I think, the Fed obviously is far more important than Bank of England at this point in time. And I think the market is looking for significant rate cuts in the Fed's next meeting and possibly more after, beyond that. But I think more than the magnum or the quantum of the rate cut, it is the fact that what has helped the market recover is this assurance that the Fed is still there and the Fed is not on this extended pause, which is what it had said it was going to be a few policy reviews ago, and that the Fed is willing to put its firepower into play and provide that level of confidence to the market. I think the market is reacting to that, a sign of confidence provided by the Fed, rather than that the coronavirus or the impact of that is sort of is going down, because that is not what's happening. In fact, if anything, the fears of the virus spreading into Europe and the US is probably much larger now than before.
So, Jahangir, there are two ways which we can argue. One, the central bankers do not have any ammunition right now because interest rates are at historic low. And second,
why do you think that? Why do you think they don't have? The Fed still has about 200 basis points of rate cuts still left. The Fed can always go to QE if it hits zero bounds. So I really do not understand this argument that the central bankers do not have firepower. They still have significant firepower. So does the Indian Central Bank have significant amount of firepower. It's a different reason that they're not using the firepower. That's a completely different argument. But this idea that they don't have firepower, I think, is misleading.
Glad you are making that point. So let's talk about low interest rates, and has that really helped the world? Because financial markets think that lower interest rates is going to be great, but looking at what's happening in Japan and the European example, do you think equity market should be fixated with the central bank action?
Look, what is happening in Japan and Europe should not be used as an example to say that monetary policy will have the same impact, let's say, on China or in India or in emerging markets or in the US. What is happening in Japan is a problem for the last 30 years. That does not get resolved by cutting interest rates a little bit here and there. They've already done that for 30 years and it hasn't worked. In Europe's case, there are much more structural issues at play rather than simply a question of adding more liquidity. But if you look at the emerging markets, if you look at US, yes, Federal Reserve monetary policy can have a significant effect. If you look at emerging markets, if you leave behind Brazil is probably the only outlier. Almost everywhere, real interest rates are just about the last 15 years of average, whereas growth is about 250 basis points below that average. So clearly there is a lot of space for real interest rates to be brought down. And in the absence of real interest rates being brought down, I don't really see how growth can even recover to the last 15 years average.
Jahangir, we can keep on debating what's going to come out, but I guess this is such an unknown. We really don't know how markets are going to grapple with it, or for that matter, the world.